So my name's Simon Townsend, one of the chief technologists at Absence. On stage with me, I have got John Rolls, who looks after product management. I have also got Gary McAllister, who is a senior product manager for our security portfolio. And we've also got John Wallace in the audience, who's the chief technology for the US. There's been a lot going on at Absence over the last couple of weeks and months. So we want to spend some time and answer any questions you might have about the Landesk acquisition. We also want to update you on version 10 of our DesktopNow product. I would like to show you some things that I believe you may not be aware of within our data product. We want to show you our analytics or user metrics tool, and we also want to talk to you about endpoint security. So we're going to try and cover all of that as quickly as we can. Gary, you want to start with a video?
Hey, you got that? Sure. Did you see that Brian Madden article? No. You said we're boring. You don't think we're boring, do you? No. Don't know what he's talking about. I heard you got a new ride. What'd you get? 2013 Camry. Sweet deal.
Here we go. Right, there are four of us. We're around for the next couple of days. So if you want to talk to us about any of the Absence technology, then please come and have a chat with us. Obviously, we've been at Synergy all week. Big week for us at Synergy because we announced our security suite and also version 10 of our DesktopNow product. Still doing a load of good stuff. There's a load of new conditions and actions that are very much Citrix related. So we got some conditions around NetScaler policies. We've got some new stuff around PVS images, for instance, so you can be far more conditional with your user environment management. At the same time, you've probably seen me tweeting all week. Landesk had their interchange conference here. That's about 1,500 customers that came here for the week as well. So Absence has been very busy in between Citrix Synergy and Interchange at the same time. And during both of those conferences, what we've been doing is we've been showing off some of the early integration work. The Landesk acquisition only closed about 4 weeks ago, but we've already identified a number of areas where our technology can actually integrate together. So we've got videos, we've got demonstrations, for instance. John's got some, they've got a product called Extraction. John's got a demo of Extraction working with Absence. I've been doing some work with their Service Desk product, and we're also looking at bringing some of their patching technology and integrating it with our whitelisting and privilege management capabilities. John.
Hello. So I'm just going to do a bit of an introduction, talk about Environment Manager, what's new, and then we're going to hand over and show you cool stuff. So Landesk breaks its product set into 3 areas, and the point of this slide is just to quickly show that we kind of enhance and expand what they're doing. So this is the user management version. It's more kind of user-centric IT. We don't actually manage user accounts. What we do, Landesk have products around asset management, service management, and physical and OS and application management. What we do is bring management to the inside of the virtual environment. We also bring file and profile migration tools, which Simon's going to show you. On the security side, they already have a good patch solution. They have some security config management. They have some mobile products. We add application control and privilege management, which Gary's going to talk about. So it really broadens the Landesk solution, gets them into this world. By the way, it's evidence of quite how little they understood Citrix before they bought AppSense. They organised a conference at the exact same time as Synergy, with a keynote that ran at the exact same time on the opposite side of the strip. So, yeah, really not very aware of this world before, but obviously all new to them. So, just to reiterate, for anyone who's not familiar, we have a few more products to not be aware of. Environment Management Manager and Application Manager have been around for a good few years. Very popular in the Citrix community for managing everything inside the session, inside the desktop. Performance Manager also has been very popular in the community, in increasing density on XenApp servers in particular. Two products we're going to show you, DataNow and Insight, are much newer. Insight is our kind of first foray into end-user analytics and just understanding the environment. Definitely not a monitoring tool. I'm going to talk a little bit the differences between Control Up and Insight. We're going on to something very different. And DataNow we're going to show you in action, but that's all about file migration. Again, all of this for on-prem data storage. All right, so I'm going to skip through a few slides you didn't do that. So I'm going to do just a quick recap on what we announced last week, what we were demoing, and what's coming out in the very near future. So Environment Manager version 10. And there's a nerd audience, so I'm going to dive straight to screenshots. So there's two sides to Environment Manager. There's the policy side and what we call personalization, which is what the profile side. So policy is about log-on script replacement, group policy replacement, pushing the settings. And what you do is you use our console to create a XML-based config, and it lives on the endpoint with the agent. And you can bake it into the master image, you can do whatever you want with it, but it can run completely standalone offline if you want it to. You don't need a continuous talkback to a server for any of that. And the first set of features we've done is enhancing that capability there. Filling in some gaps we've had for a while and just generally making it richer. So we've added more support around the simplest features, but some of the most hotly requested enhancements around drive and printer mapping, so you can specify the driver, how many times you want to retry connecting, whether you use the next drive letter or a fixed drive letter, IP printers, just a whole bunch of catch-up stuff that was previously all in scripting. It's now in the UI. File type associations. But all of these are under the control of our conditions engines. We've got this really, really rich, granular conditions engine which lets you build up any combination of environmental control factors. So, if user is in an account or an OU, they're on this IP range, they're coming through a NetScaler, they're using a particular protocol to connect, and you can build if-else rules, and you can trigger them off different parts of the logon process or application launch. It's really, the ultimate rich control. And then the actions build off that. So if user is in this group, they're on this type of desktop, they're in this XenApp farm, they're coming through a NetScaler, then map this file type association to that application. So you can set that kind of thing up now. So again, we added file type associations into the UI before. It used to be a script. Pinning things to and from the taskbar and start menu works on Windows 7 and Windows 10. And I think one of them works on Windows 8, but who cares about that? Outlook configuration, the ability to build the signature in Outlook on demand. Again, you can populate that with environment variables, session variables, things out of Active Directory, so they can be customized automatically for the user, configure Outlook profiles, just so that, again, you can target at different user groups, different server farms, whatever you're doing. And create file action. It seems so trivial, but the number of requests we have for this, the ability to create any file on the fly, or just a flag file, and populate it with environment variables based using our condition set. So again, it's just a way of configuring legacy applications. And finally, wallpaper. We never actually had it was a script before. Most basically, everyone usually talks about Environment Manager, to create your cat wallpaper. But we never actually had a action for creating wallpaper, so it's there now in the UI. And again, you can target it by group, you can customize it, and so on. Oh, that's fun. Don't do that. Okay. So that's the policy side of things. So that's the bit that's logon script replacement, group policy replacement, all that good stuff. Now, the other side of the product is all about capturing what the user already has in their profile and replaying it wherever they go. So they move between sessions, between desktops, between servers. We want to make sure that their personality follows them. And it breaks into two areas. Windows desktop stuff, where we literally capture stuff out of the registry, out of the file system, and we replay it into the new destination session. And we're pretty intelligent about it. We map things between different OS versions, between server and desktop. We make sure it goes to the right place. And we don't just like capture the registry and blast it into the registry. We selectively load and enumerate keys as they go in. So many years of getting that right, and frankly breaking a lot of profiles before we got that one right. So it's the ultimate roaming profile solution, but it works and it's efficient and lightweight. It also works over our web services protocol, so you're not dealing with copying through from a file share. It works, very efficiently. It scales up massively because you can build web services, SQL Server backend. The piece we've not had a great handle on until now, and by now I mean it's in release candidate now, should be released in the middle of June, is how you manage the data inside the database. So we do a very nice job of capturing it and replaying it, and suddenly you realize, hang on, I captured a whole bunch of temporary files I don't want. Worst case customer scenario I ever heard was, oh, we accidentally picked up a bunch of medical records we shouldn't have had. Instant privacy violation, HIPAA enforcement, shut all the desktops down while we clean this up. So the ability to go into the database and say, right, for this group of users, delete these files, these folders, modify these registry keys. Say you replace a server and suddenly everyone's profile is pointing to the wrong server. You can actually go in and modify the data now. So we've got this whole new web console, delegated admins, so different teams can work with different groups of users. You can do scheduled bulk operations or individual help desk kind of operations for helping a user. This is a huge step forward in providing management tooling, eliminating SQL scripts, and generally just making the life of owning this product easier. Anything important there? Couple of measures. Good. All right. So you can do this kind of thing. You go in here, you pick the target personalization group you want, and you can do things as quick tasks. Just go and delete a bunch of stuff, go and reset all the broken profiles, or you can go in and really granularly edit exactly which files I want to delete, how I want to modify them. You build up a shopping list of actions, and you can make them run now, or you can schedule them to run in 8 hours time overnight so that the database doesn't get murdered during production hours. So lots of good stuff there. This is the single hottest feature in this release. We've been asked for this for years and finally delivered it. Just a fun fact, we've also been playing with web technologies as we move into the cloud. So this is actually built on Angular, JS now, JavaScript front end. It's running on IIS on the back end, but we've also been bringing products to market with a Node back end as well. So we're getting very cloud friendly, and we'll show you some of that in a minute. The other big change we made is the server configuration portal. So the challenge for the product management team is we have customers who start at like 35 users at one end, I mean a small trucking company, to literally our largest right now, we're rolling out 200,000 users for a massive worldwide defense organization, and everything in between. And so we have to make a product that scales, and the clunkiest area was setting up all the servers. Frankly, we have servers for managing the personalization data and servers for deploying configurations and agents. And there was never a central place to manage all those and upgrade them and manage the databases. And just with like the blue-green thing you're talking about, so doing staging environments where you stand up a new one and then flip over, we can do that too. We can put multiple instances of different versions on the same hardware, so you can get your new environment ready to go, flip everyone over, and if it goes horribly wrong, which it never does, of course, but stuff happens, then you can flip back again. So all of that is now managed through this new interface. This is a web front end that sits on top of PowerShell. So you can script the hell out of this. In fact, there's more capabilities in PowerShell than there is in Web UI. That's always the nature of these things. But that's the other big feature that's in there. And that feature, frankly, is the reason it's not been released quite yet, because everything else is finished, and this one we're still working on. Should be about another 2 weeks. But so as you can see, a huge step forward. That's what we called it version 10 for two reasons. One, it's a big step forward, and two, if we'd called it version 9, when Microsoft goes to Windows 10, we'd look really dumb. So, and we look dumb anyway. All right.
So a lot of the work we've done on that as well, John, has allowed, so we've got a lot of customers now who do desired state configuration in terms of the assets infrastructure. We've also, quite some time ago now, we uploaded the blueprint templates to Citrix Cloud, for instance. So if you want to set up the absence infrastructure, you can go to Citrix Cloud, you can download Whitelisting templates. We've done the same thing with other third-party tools. We're going to probably do the same thing with the Landesk management suite as well, right?
Yeah. So with that said, I'm just going to quickly skip back. I'll say 2 words on the Landesk stuff, then we'll go now, okay?
Yep.
because we also updated the console. Apparently, taking all the color away and going very flat and black and white is very trendy, what the kids are doing right now. So, but I'm a 90s child, so I prefer the rainbow-colored consoles. But
any questions on anything you said there?
Anything you say isn't being captured on video, by the way, because you're not on mic.
Okay.
oh, where did that slide go?
This should have been in.
Yeah. Yeah, you missed out. There we go. 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 Thank you. So I just wanted to say a quick introduction to Landesk technologies that we're interested in, because Landesk has been around for 30 years in one form or another, doing just basic desktop management. Started out of Intel because they wanted a way to more rapidly stand up Windows desktops, so they can sell more CPUs. It was that simple. Over the years, they've acquired a lot of technology, which we're integrating with. So Landesk Workspaces, you'll hear more about. It's a user self-service portal that can fire off all kinds of back-end tasks. We're going to integrate it with our DesktopNow stuff so that a user can self-serve themselves and their applications or profile changes or whatever we want. So we were demonstrating that. We've actually got a video we can't show here, but we've got of that integration. Shavlik, you may know, was briefly owned by VMware, got spun out, brought back into Landesk. Patch management, just best-of-breed patch management, not just for Microsoft stuff, but for third-party apps, third-party operating systems. Really comprehensive, and it is. And it's if you've seen any other patch management tool, it's probably a third-party OEM or SDK taken from Shavlik. There's a few others that aren't out there, but Shavlik is the number one in that space. So we're going to definitely be integrating with that. Empower is their Shavlik patch management as a service. So some of the security stuff we're planning on will integrate with that. So we'll have endpoint security control, whitelisting, privilege management, and patching all from the cloud. That's for another day, but that's what we're working on right now. And extraction is a great dashboarding tool they bought, which again we're using to do really deep dive reporting and nice visuals. So a ton of good stuff inside Landesk, probably a lot more than you realized, and you'll see us integrating and announcing that over the coming year. So yeah, that's cool. But anyway, so let's dive into data now, and
All right.
Simon's going to show you that.
I need to go back to my slides. Thank you. Any questions while we swap over? No? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Right. Data now. What is it with the monitor? Do we know?
Just a second or two to catch up.
Okay. Well, I don't want to do any slides. I want to go and look at my machine in a minute, so that's going to cause a problem. Data now is a product that we've had for probably about 3 or 4 years now, and it was originally designed to solve the Dropbox problem. People were coming to us and they were saying, my users are installing Dropbox and they're saving corporate data up in the cloud, and people didn't like that. So the first thing that Data Now did was to be able to allow users to have a very similar experience but get access to their home drive. So if you wanted to present a user's home drive to a Windows machine, a Mac, an iOS, an Android device, that's what Data Now did. So very simply, we have a number of Data Now agents that sit on a number of different devices. We talk an HTTPS connection to a virtual appliance that typically sits in the DMZ or a number of those appliances, and then we talk to your existing SMB or SharePoint, for instance. Now what we've done over the years is we've expanded that out. So we don't just provide access to the home drive, for instance, we can provide access to other SMB file shares. And in a second, when I go into my machine, you'll see that I've got access to my home drive, but I've also got access to a number of other shares that we have on file. The beauty of that is that data can be synchronized down to my device, but then when I log on to my virtualized environment, I can just use traditional drive mappings, for instance. And so my data is being kept in sync. I'm starting to get a similar look and feel and experience with it. The other thing that's very powerful within Data Now is the sync engine. Anyone that's used OneDrive, for instance, will know that it tries to synchronize everything down to your device. Those file shares that we have they're a policy that was put on them. So I can choose that I want to synchronize Benny's home drive to his device. I can choose that I don't want to synchronize his home drive to his Mac client, for instance. And I definitely don't want to synchronize the terabytes of data that I've got on my file shares. I just want him to have a view-only mode, and we use this ghost file view of the files. So that's all good. Access to on-premise file shares, for instance. The two key things that I want to highlight today, however, are some changes we've made on the client side which completely change how a user works with a technology like this. If I've currently got OneDrive or Dropbox as an example, and I'm in Word and I want to save a file, where do I need to save that file, Andrew Wood?
You've called out on what?
I've caught him out on the hop, see? I knew he wasn't listening. As I'm typing in my Word document and I decide I need to file save, I have to save it into the OneDrive container or into the Dropbox container for it to synchronize, yeah? What AppSense has done is introduce something we call in-location sync. And in-location sync allows me to specify local file paths and parts of my profile that I want AppSense to sync automatically. So I can tell DataNow to synchronize everything on my desktop. I can tell DataNow to synchronize my documents, for instance. So when I'm working on my machine, I don't have to change how I work historically. Now, I'm hoping we can bum out of. Okay, now we have to try and get back on the Wi-Fi, which is a challenge. Everyone stop for a second. Let's do visitor Wi-Fi, and let's just do andrew.wood at gmail.com. There we go. Okay, what you will see, hopefully, let's make sure I am logged in and I can connect to the internet, for instance. You will see a number of files on my desktop. You will see a number of files that I've got so I've got a folder here called 2015, for instance. I've got a folder here called downloads. I've got a folder here called desktop, for instance. And thank you. If I go into my DataNow folder, so if I go into DataNow in the same way that I would Dropbox, I can see a container like any other file and folder sync technology. And what you can see here is a number of file shares that I've got. These are corporate file shares that are sat on SMB shares within our own data center. There are terabytes of data in there, and if I go into team shares, for instance, and hopefully not show anything untoward, you'll see that there is hundreds and thousands of files in there, and I have a view-only mode of those files. As I browse down, for instance, those folders, I can choose to download those files on demand. So they are not being synced. There is a policy in place saying, whatever you do, don't synchronize these because you'll consume all the bandwidth and take up all the space. But I still have a view-only and I still have access to them. However, if I go into the registry, in addition to that, what I do have are some settings on my client, and there's ADM templates for this. If I go and have a look here, you'll see that DataNow is configured to do this in-location sync for certain folders. So my desktop, my documents, my favorites, my pictures, videos, music, and downloads are all being synchronized back to my home drive on my SMB share. So as I'm working on a day-to-day basis, I am saving files to my desktop, to my documents, to downloads, and working in exactly the same way that I would be, and DataNow is synchronizing them underneath. That is very, very powerful, for instance, if you then want to go and roll out DataNow to an existing environment to do a Windows migration, because we can start sucking up the data from the user, and we can actually take people's data that's currently on their machines, bring it back centrally, and then obviously help with the migration. As I jump from one machine to another, I can obviously just make, not only Environment Manager make the desktop look like it does, but I can bring back my files as well.
always been the holy grail of file migration.
The other thing that I've got enabled on my machine is something called drive map emulation. And drive map emulation is there specifically to complement an environment where a user is logged onto a desktop and onto a virtualized desktop. When I log onto my VDI within AppSense, I get a T drive mapped, and it goes to my team shares. When I come back onto my desktop, I want a similar look and feel. So what we've done here is we've said, let DesktopNow emulate a drive mapping so that the user thinks he's got a T drive, and underneath, very, very simply, just give access to that same team share that I had access to before. Everything that is going through the DesktopNow appliance is being audited. We use a syslog, so we've got some customers now that are, for instance, auditing all of that information, putting it into Splunk, for instance, so you can see how much data is being synchronized, who's sharing what with who, and whether all of the data has been migrated, for instance. The smart card support in there. What else have we introduced in there recently? Oh, that's the one thing. I knew there was something else I wanted to talk about. So the one thing that people keep saying to us is, okay, I like the fact that you can present me a T drive. I like the fact that you can do in-location sync. And I love the fact that the majority of my unstructured data is on file shares. But I also have something called OneDrive, which gives me 5, 10, 15 gigs worth of space. So the one thing that we have now got in beta at the moment is a OneDrive connector. I'm not going to put the slide up because we'll have to go through that whole loop again. So what we now have the ability to do, as well as specifying SharePoint and also these on-premise file stores, we now have the ability to connect into OneDrive for Business. Okay? So I can actually now present the T drive as my OneDrive storage. I can actually save all of my documents on my desktop as I would normally, but they're all being synchronized back through the DesktopNow appliance, which, by the way, is on-premise, so I can audit and understand what's going on. But the storage of those files is actually using my OneDrive account as well, right? So we get to use the OneDrive storage because it comes free with Office 365, but we're using the policy engine and the synchronization engine of the AppSense DesktopNow product. Makes some sense? Someone give me some nods. Good. Gary. After you. Do you need your machine?
No, I'm just going through the slides.
It didn't do it then, did it?
Well, turn it on and then see. Hey, there we go. Yeah, so how many of you knew that AppSense done endpoint security? About 2 or 3 hands. I'm glad you did. Yeah, we do, and actually we've done it for 17 years. It was the first thing we've done, and for a long time it was the only thing we've done. We did market ourselves as a security company back in the day. But obviously in the last few, 7, 8 years or so, we've been associated more with the profile policy side that John mentioned earlier. But in fact, Application Manager, which is our endpoint security offering, is on about 9 million machines out there. And we've added more licenses in the last 2 years to AM than we ever have historically in the 15 years before that. And we've not really changed the core of it much. It's always done application control, whitelisting, something we call trusted ownership, and we introduced privilege management into it a few years ago. But yeah, we've seen a massive uptake recently, being helped by people like Gartner saying that you need to have an application control solution as part of your expanded security stack. And actually with our new big brothers at Landesk, we're going to be increasing what we can do in the security space as well, and it's actually getting very exciting for us. Excuse me. Now, we've also got the Insight product, which John mentioned earlier, and this actually comes into the security side in quite an important way. It's all well and good kind of having a whitelisting solution, or trying to take away admin privileges, or find out who's got local admin rights. But you actually need to know all that information first before you can configure it. It's all well and good saying, right, we have a directive now that we need to take local admin rights away from everybody, but you need to actually know, well, who has admin rights? What are they doing with those rights? And you need to build that into a policy. And that's where Insight comes in. So we've added a lot of new stuff to Insight in the last release. As you can see, we start off on a dashboard, gives us an overview of our environment, breaks it down into nice, easy areas. As you can see, this is the absence one. We've got no local admins.
So, Gary, what's the architecture of Insight?
So it's similar setup to DesktopNow. So we do run on a virtual appliance on-prem, although we are at the moment, well, we have a kind of internal pilot where we're running Insight in AWS. So essentially, agent on the endpoint, pushing up a lot of information to the Insight server. We're using Elasticsearch there and ICDB storage. And essentially it's used Insight to gather data and present that data back about what's happening in an environment. So for example, we can see app usage, so which applications are being run. It's helpful for like license compliance, things like that. By who, how often. One of the big things, oh no, wrong one. So here's a breakdown of some of the reports that we run in Insight. And this is actually quite an interesting one and quite a key one that actually helps us with some of the rest of our suite. So one thing we've always said with the Environment Manager is that it will greatly improve your logon times. So here's an example of before and after. You can see that Insight's picked up that during this user's logon, group policy took 16 seconds to apply. Now after we put those group policies in Environment Manager, because we're multi-threaded, we can see the same group policies running at the end there, and it's taking around 3 seconds to run. So it's good kind of justification of if you make a config change, or if you see that, Christ, for some reason my logons have doubled in the last week, what's happening, you can very quickly pinpoint exactly where that problem is. So going back to the security side of things, we can pick up which applications require admin rights, who's using them, which system controls, so are users changing things like date and time, display, Wi-Fi settings. You get all this information in here and it helps us build our security policies. Yes, and then very easy to kind of manipulate that data, filter, sort, etc.
It's all API driven too, so you can build custom queries with URL.
Yeah.
Don't
Another thing it helps us pick up is trends. So again, if we see, for example, that our profile sizes have gotten huge or that logon times are slowly increasing, then we can look back and see exactly kind of when that started to happen. So what we've delivered so far and what we're delivering next, I'm not going to read through all of those. Now the top one there, underpinning our next generation cloud security project. So we are working on a brand new concept at the moment. We're not going to introduce it too much at the moment. It's called ESP, and it's around kind of moving our security offerings to the cloud and actually bringing this data that Insight collects right into that whole configuration workflow. So if you go to add something to your whitelist, then when you're going through that process, we'll have a list of applications that we would suggest that you should be adding. If you want to trust a vendor or trust a particular user, we'll be able to tell you, again, within that configuration workflow, the ones that we would recommend that you add. And again, so that's bringing Insight and an application manager together. Just cautious of time. So, my voice is going to. Application manager. So this is the one that's been around for a very, very long time. And just a kind of overview of what AM does today. So it started off as a kind of terminal server product to stop users introducing things that they didn't want to introduce. Now, the concept that we use is called trusted ownership. So rather than having to whitelist every single file in an environment, we look at more at how files were introduced. And we do that by looking at the owner. So every file under Windows has an owner. And what we do is create a trusted owners list, and therefore anything owned by those accounts is allowed to run. So that way we don't have to list out every file under Windows, every folder, etc. So what it also means is that we will then block anything that is introduced by somebody not on that trusted owners list. So if I'm not a trusted owner, I can't go and download Google Chrome and install it, and I don't have to specify anywhere that Google Chrome is a blocked app. It's me, the user, who is blocked from introducing things. So that gets us away from having to add signatures all the time and constantly update a list of good and bad applications. So some of the things that we are introducing into AM going forward, obviously Windows 10 and 2016 support. We're doing more with browser control now. Voice is really going. So we've always had the ability to do URL redirection. We can elevate websites and elevate web installs. We're actually looking at now managing and controlling web applications. So if you want to remove an option from Salesforce, if you want to, one user case was a company wanted to remove the reply all button in Outlook for Web. And that's the kind of granularity we're looking to control within applications, within web applications, so that they can be customized based on the user's kind of current context. Maybe we don't want them running a certain Salesforce report if they're off-site. Maybe if they're on Wi-Fi somewhere, we don't want them to access certain parts of the system. So just an overall look at the roadmap. Version 10.0 is actually technically available now, but will be properly launched with the rest of the version 10 suite in a few weeks' time. I'll go into these in more detail. But really going forward, and just to really reiterate, we've had a lot of questions this week and over the last few weeks about the future of DesktopNow. Obviously, we are now part of Landesk. And just to, well, you can see the roadmap is still stretching off into the future. So the DesktopNow products stay as they are. They're not going anywhere. What we'll see is a lot more integration between them. But certainly, the roadmap for DesktopNow stays very, very strong. So some of the things we're looking to add going forward, being able to protect processes from local admins, being able to protect files and folders. So if you don't want a local admin being able to delete the host file or something, then we'll better protect that. And then we're looking more at the advanced web app control, look at the file reputation, something that Landesk can bring to us. And yeah, I'll go through the version 10 in more detail. So it's been a big release. Our last release of AM was July last year, was it?
Sure.
Yeah, right about then. One of the biggest things we've done, John mentioned the really strong, rich conditions engine that we've got in Environment Manager. So we can be very specific about when we want policies to apply. We've actually taken that whole conditions engine and we've put it into Application Manager as well. What this means is you can be very, very specific about when you want to block an application, when you want to elevate an application. Before it was, if your username is this, if you're in this group, if your machine is in this group. We had about 4 or 5 different conditions there. So yeah, if you're John, then you can't run this. If your machine's called this, then et cetera, et cetera. What we can do now is using this kind of if and or control is say, if it's Friday afternoon and you're in this certain IP address range and this file exists and this process is running, et cetera, and then make our decisions based off very, very granular policy. So yeah, something that's going to remove a lot of scripting that people have done in the past to determine if files should be running or not. So a few pictures of that. So just a small snapshot of some of the conditions that we can now use to evaluate and decide if things can run. So are you on a laptop? What's your operating system? Are you on a VDI machine, etc. Yes, we've also updated our terminology. So for years we had prohibited and accessible, yeah. We were the only ones who used those terms, so we just moved out loud tonight now. Our URL redirection, we've moved to per rule. It used to be a global setting, so we really feel that being able to control the browser and what users do within browsers is going to be very important going forward. So we're making steps already to improve what we do there. And again, brand new look and feel to the console, which hasn't really been updated in a very long time. So just trying to make it a lot cleaner and simpler to use. Yeah, and so again, I won't go through all these, but some of the highlights for 10.1, which we're targeting towards the end of this year. One of the big ones there, being able to protect files, folders, etc. Here we go. One thing that people seem to miss when we talk about privilege management and application control is we always assume it's a standard user we want to control. We want to stop them doing things. But actually, it's just as important to prevent admins from doing stuff as well. So if you are a XenApp admin and you have access to a server where you can control what you need to control there, you may genuinely need to have local admin rights. But should you also be able to add roles to that machine, change firewall settings, change Windows Update settings? Once you're an admin on that box, you've got the keys to the kingdom, really. So a lot of what we do as well is dropping certain rights from admins to do stuff. So we can already do that today. We can stop an admin from restarting certain services or installing certain bits of software, or dropping their rights to that of a standard user for certain things as well. A lot of people kind of forget that side. And yeah, looking to enhance that with 10.1. Yeah, and then 10.2 is when we go more into the advanced web app control and endpoint analysis, kind of finding out more about the discovery story and what's happening in our environment. John's already mentioned the same slide twice here. Is, yeah, I'll be wrong for that one. So one of the really cool things that's come out of the Landesk acquisition is that there's not much overlap between what they do and what we do. We both have a security offering, and they actually complement each other very, very well. And this is from the SANS First 5 list. She has critical security controls, and now together with Landesk, we actually hit the top 5 of these very, very well. So it's suggested we can prevent 85% of intrusion threats by implementing these 4 areas. Well, Landesk are the best in business for patching. Honestly, every third word they say is patching. It's annoying, but they are very, very good at it. So yeah, patching the OS, patching applications is critical. And then application whitelisting, privilege management is where we come in as well. So this is the kind of thing we can expect going forward, is that you're going to see a much more rounded and much more rich security offering. And with Landesk, they've never really worked too much in virtual environments. So obviously we've got that experience, and hoping to kind of bring them into our world just as much as them into us into them. And in my voice finally finishing off, I'm going to end there. Any questions on anything we've gone through?
Yes, I wonder, your customer base has an application already installed. Have you had any reports in regards to how you dealt with ransomware? Like the new ransomware things that usually hits their macros and emails? Were you able to block that before?
So, yeah, I mean, things like, there was a load of tweets when Locky started getting quite big, and generally around the fact that because we don't have to specify files, we don't have to know in advance what an intrusion is going to be to block it, is that it just kind of blocks things out of the, right out of the box. So a lot of customers, we had a lot of success stories with Locky in particular, same with CryptoLocker as well. There's a load of videos on YouTube showing us not having to reconfigure ourselves to block these certain threats coming in. Macros is a big one, and we're kind of adding more support around that as well going forward. Any more?
So is there any specific cloud story? I mean, like specific architectures that are cloud optimized?
Okay, so if you look at the suite at the moment, you've got something like personalization server, IS and SQL. We are looking at the moment in within the next 6 to 12 months to change some of the authentication methods on that. So at the moment that requires Windows authentication. So we're looking at doing some of that. On the security side of things though, as well as continuing with the agent-based application manager and managing that from what you would know as the management center on-prem, they're looking at actually putting the control plane and the management of that in AWS, and that is the ESP project that Gary worked about, right? So,
what I found out, I did a couple of projects in the past where customers were trying to migrate their stuff they had on-prem into either Azure or AWS. And when they tried to do it one by one, they miserably failed. So it just doesn't work. So cloud architectures are fundamentally different to the on-prem architectures, which most customers don't get immediately. And so as an independent software vendor, you should be well aware of that.
No, agreed. coming back to your question, to be completely transparent, there was at least 2 different versions of Locky that were floating around, right? The first one came in over email. It might have been a batch file. It might have been something like what I've got here. It's just like, an HTML page which then decides to try and run a batch file or a script or do something in the background. AppSense out of the box, because of our trusted ownership checking, would block a unauthorized VBS script. It would block an unauthorized batch file, for instance. What it wouldn't do for you today is be able to block or tell the difference between a piece of Java, for instance, that was running. We either allow Java to run or we don't, and that's something that's currently on our roadmap. But for all intents and purposes, out of the box, because of how trusted ownership checking works, if it is a batch file, a VB script, an standalone executable, regardless of how it's introduced, USB key, email download, then AppSense would block it. Good question. I wish I could give you $5. I've got no money left.
We actually have another one which is totally related.
Go on.
Person interest.
Yes, go.
Your agents are quite intense, right? So you have drivers, field drivers, and hooks and all kinds of stuff. So how do you deal with the compatibility issues, testing on customer sites? Are you seeing lots of issues of different customers? Do you only see it there and not in the lab? Or how does the whole testing thing
Look at that. 2 monitoring tools finding out the same thing.
I'm very interested to know whether that's a loaded question and whether you've got a customer with it. I mean, application manager, environment manager, performance manager, they are, 15 years old. We register the altitude values with Microsoft, for instance. We scale test them up to 150,000 seats using some cloud technology. I mean, John, are we aware of any driver-based issues at the moment in terms of performance impact?
No, we've worked on that a lot over the years. We're still thinning them out even more, actually. So EM 10.0, we've ripped out the NSA driver. We don't need that at all now. AM 10.1, we're going to consolidate down to
And although they're 2 services that are running, Application Manager and Environment Manager are using the same hooking mechanism, also the rules engine, right? So we're starting to bring some of those together.
But for Insights, I just wanted to quickly show, we actually have a separate, we just started from scratch, user mode only, no hooks, no drivers, no reboots, nothing. So it's 2 meg download install, completely transparent. It caches events locally and tries to coordinate every 2 minutes. So it's not designed as a monitoring tool. This is not real-time monitoring. This is building up a picture at a time of user behavior, so to inform security decisions or highlight areas that we can improve with other products.
Any questions?
Blazing Wi-Fi.
Oh.
This comes as an on-prem appliance with a built-in database. So it's what we were showing earlier. This is kind of probably the only really deep of it.
I'm using Environment Manager, so you don't get to see a great deal. Just a load of actions in parallel. Want someone that's got a long group policy or something.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yes, that's on login breakdown.
So Insight is used by a lot of AppSense customers to really help them understand what the benefit of implementing Environment Manager or Application Manager would be.
Anyway, can you share some of your experience? Let's say you're talking to a customer. What was the login duration and how did it look like after like a full EM implementation?
Yeah.
Do you know like
So if you go and ask our guys that do the work, they will always try and tell you that they want to try and get a sub 30-second logon. If I've got my sales hat on, I'll always try and say 20 seconds. But there's just lots and lots of examples of customers, and your stats were very interesting, by the way, because the majority of your stats, there was a big area that was under 30 seconds, which in our experience is very good. The majority of our customers, in fact, have got log-on times that are 45 seconds, 1.5 minutes. The only thing I would say is the problem that we solve better than 1 minute 30 down to 20 seconds is to try and smooth out the inconsistency. And it's the inconsistency of log-on times that is sometimes more frustrating. The other thing I would say is that we're finding more and more people, particularly as we're deployed out to more and more desktops, they're not logging off. People aren't logging off, they're just closing the lid and going. And so we're actually finding more and more of our customers are moving things from logon or replicating what's in logon into our other nodes. So we've got other trigger points. We can do condition checks and drive mappings and printer mappings when you connect and disconnect from Citrix, when you unlock and unlock your desktop, for instance. So it's interesting.
Do you offer like a premium type solution for this, where you can try it with 5 users for free?
Yes. Yes. Come and speak to me. But yeah. Yeah. No, we do. Typically, it's our platinum partners have got that as part of their offering. Yeah. But and any customer that we're engaged with that is fundamentally they're looking at the DesktopNow products to do environment management, application management. This can obviously just help. But as John said, by no means. I mean, you can download this appliance, you can get up and running, and very quickly you'll be able to see the differences between something like Control Up and Insight. Insight is very, very simple, limited graphs and use cases, right? And I don't mean to say that and disrespect the guys that are developing it, right? But it's not an analytics tool. It's not collecting anywhere near the data points. Your tool's being used far more from an operational point of view, right? Trend analysis, etc. So, but it does give us that visibility so we can at least demonstrate what the benefit would be. Any other questions? No? Okay. So, new version of DesktopNow, version 10. Data now is becoming increasingly more and more popular with our customers. Migrating data from one desktop to another seems to be even more important to some customers than dealing with incompatible profiles, for instance. That's very scalable, and we've got some customers now that are 120, 160,000 seats doing their data migration with that. Security and privilege management and application control is really is being used in a Citrix and a virtualized environment, but is also growing at a phenomenal rate on the traditional desktop. It's a big problem for people, and that's where AppSense is being used quite commonly. The only thing that I wanted to mention that Gary didn't mention, if you minimize that quickly and you try to run that, have you still got that script open somewhere? No, just try and run that. Just try and run that just scroll down a little bit more. Exit without paying. I don't want to pay the ransom. Exit losing all files. What that's going to try and do is that tries to run a script. Okay, and application manager blocks it. That's fine in a fully managed environment. We want that to be blocked, and we also want the user to run Word. What we've done, however, if John clicks on that hyperlink, there is a massive middle ground at the moment where people need to be able to have a secure environment, but to be able to install things. Let's just say Andrew wants to install iTunes, right? He downloads iTunes, he tries to run it, AppSense blocks it. We need a way of dealing with that, and something called the emergency change control request allows me to either provide him with a unique key, so there's an 8-digit key there, and he calls up the help desk, and that key is for Andrew, for iTunes, and it will allow him to then run the installer and then run the application. Or alternatively, that can be an email that goes up into a service desk system and then automates it. So we've already done some work with Landesk Service Desk, for instance, where the user says, I want to run iTunes. It goes into the Service Desk product. Somebody authorizes it, or a manager authorizes it. That then uses the application manager scripting engine and creates a snippet of code that gets sent down to my device, and I'm then allowed to run it. So there's a massive need to secure a desktop, but because we don't want to affect user experience, and users still need to install things like printer drivers and other applications, we need to be able to give people that flexible approach, and that's really where a lot of work has been put in probably the last 2 versions of Application Manager. Okay. Thank you for listening to our sermon. We appreciate your time. We love sponsoring this event. We'll be at Dublin, we'll be in Rome, so and we're around all day. So thank you very much for your time, everyone. Appreciate it.